She was still in her postal uniform when it happened. The gray shirt with the eagle patch on the sleeve, the dark pants with the crease worn flat from 12 years of walking the same routes in the same shoes. She had a cart with her, the kind with the broken left wheel that pulled slightly to the right, the one she always requested because she had learned its particular rhythm and could correct for it without thinking. 4 packages left to deliver. She was almost done. Paulette Odom was 47 years old. She had worked for the United States Postal Service since she was 35, the year her husband left, and she needed something reliable that was not a person. She had her route. She had her cart. She had her daughter Simone, who was 9, and liked to leave notes in her mother's lunch bag on the days she remembered to pack one. Paulette had her life organized, the way you organize a life when every part of it is load-bearing. Nothing extra, nothing wasted. Everything in its place. She was standing at the counter of Whitmore's Fine Gifts on Beckford Street in Savannah, Georgia, trying to get a signature for a package when Sylvia Whitmore came out from the back room. Sylvia Whitmore was 58 years old. Her husband, Douglas Whitmore, had opened the store in 1994 with money from his father's estate. The store carried crystal figurines, monogrammed leather goods, engraved silver frames, the kind of things you bought for people you wanted to impress at a price that confirmed you had the means to do so. Sylvia had taken over operations after Douglas had his bypass in 2019, and she ran it with the particular authority of a woman who had been waiting for her turn and was not interested in sharing it. She wore a silk blouse, the color of cream, a strand of pearls. Hair set the way hair gets set on Tuesday mornings when you have a standing appointment at a salon that does not post its prices online. She looked at Paulette the way certain people look at a postal worker, not as a person who had just walked 4 miles and was going to walk 4 more, as a category, as furniture that had arrived at the wrong time. She said without looking directly at her to the young woman behind the register, "Is this going to take long? I have a client coming in at 2. Paulette did not say anything. She set the package on the counter and slid the electronic scanner toward the young woman, whose name tag read Denise. Denise reached for it. She was maybe 23, first job after community college, still learning which customers ran the room and how to navigate them without getting flattened. Sylvia said it again, louder this time. Still not to Paulette, still to Denise. "I cannot have the front of the store looking like a loading dock when Margaret Forsyth walks in." The words landed the way they were designed to, not loud enough to be a scene, precise enough to be a cut. Denise's hand paused on the scanner. Her eyes moved to Paulette, then to Sylvia, then down to the counter. She did not say a word. She had worked at Whitmore's for 4 months. She already knew which things she was expected to see and which ones she was expected to look past. Paulette did not put the scanner away. She did not step back from the counter. She stood where she was, the same way she stood on doorsteps in the rain, in the August heat, and apartment buildings with broken buzzers and staircases that smelled like old carpet and someone else's dinner. She had learned a long time ago that the world sorted people into those who got to speak and those who were expected to absorb. She had also learned something else, that refusing to absorb it was its own kind of language. Quiet, unambiguous, impossible to dismiss. She waited for the signature. Sylvia moved closer to the counter. She picked up a pen from beside the register and set it down again in a different spot, the way a person rearranges objects when they want to appear occupied. She said, still not addressing Paulette, "These deliveries are supposed to come through the back entrance. There's a sign." There was a sign. It was on the alley door. It said deliveries preferred, not deliveries required. Paulette had used the front entrance before. So had every other carrier who serviced Beckford Street. Paulette said, "I need a signature for this package, ma'am." It was the first thing she had said since she walked in. 7 words. No edge in them. No apology in them either. Sylvia looked at her then. Not the brief glance she had been giving her, but a full look. The kind of look that takes inventory. The uniform. The cart. The broken wheel. The small rip at the bottom hem of Paulette's pants from where it had caught on a fence post 2 weeks ago, and she had not had time to mend it yet. She said, Is there a reason you can't use the back? Paulette said, I need a signature. Sylvia picked up the pen again. She did not sign anything. She said to Denise, why don't you take this to the back and let Paulette continue her route? She said the name the way a person repeats a word they found on a name-tag and did not particularly want to learn. Denise reached for the package. Her hands were moving faster than her face, the particular speed of someone trying to smooth over a situation before it becomes one. She was almost there. She had the package. She was turning. And then the door to Whitmore's opened. A man in a charcoal blazer came in. He was not wearing a name tag. He was not carrying anything. He held the door for a moment before letting it close behind him, the automatic courtesy of someone who had been taught to notice other people in a room. His name was Raymond Cutter. He was 61 years old. He had driven up from his house in Bluffton that morning to drop off a framed photograph at the shop on Drayton Street, and had taken the long way back because the weather was good, and Beckford was pretty in October when the trees were turning and he liked the light through the windows of the old buildings. He had not intended to stop at Whitmore's. He had been in once, 3 years ago, for a gift for his board chair's retirement. He recognized the store. He walked in because the door was there and he was slowing down anyway, and he thought he might look at the frames in the window display. He took 3 steps inside and stopped. He was not sure at first what exactly he was watching. A postal worker at the counter. A young cashier with her hands on a package and her eyes pointed at the floor. A woman in a cream blouse holding a pen she had not used. He stood still. He listened. Sylvia said, to Denise, just take it to the back. She can wait there. Paulette said, I have a route to finish. Sylvia said, everyone has somewhere to be. She said it the way you say something you have been saving, with a kind of finality. As though the conversation was over now because she had decided it was. The young woman at the register, Denise, stood between them, holding the package with both hands. She looked like someone standing in a room where the temperature had dropped without warning, and she did not have a coat, and she did not know how to ask for one. Raymond did not move yet. He watched for another 10 seconds. He watched Paulette stand at the counter with her scanner and her cart and her broken left wheel, without moving, without raising her voice, without giving an inch of the ground she had walked in on. He watched the cashier look at the floor. He watched Sylvia hold her pen. Then he walked to the counter. He did not hurry. He did not announce himself. He walked the way a man walks when he has been in enough rooms to know that arrival is its own kind of statement. He stood beside Paulette, not in front of her. Beside her. He looked at Sylvia. He said, Is there a problem? Sylvia looked at him. She took in the blazer, the watch, the easy way he stood. She recalibrated in the visible, instantaneous way that certain people recalibrate when someone who reads as important enters their radius. She smiled. The management smile. The one with the right muscles but no warmth underneath. She said, No problem at all. We were just redirecting the delivery to the back entrance. Raymond said, Is the package signed for? Sylvia looked at the scanner on the counter. She looked at Denise. She looked back at Raymond. She said, I was just about to. Raymond said, Because she's been standing here for a while. He said it simply, not as an accusation, as a fact being named out loud in a room where everyone already knew it, but no one had said it yet. Sylvia's smile held its shape. The edges of it went tight. She said, I don't believe we've met. I'm Sylvia Whitmore. This is my store. Raymond said, I heard what you said when I walked in. She looked at him. The smile was still there, but something underneath it had shifted. The way ice shifts on a lake, not enough to crack, but enough to change the sound when you step on it. He said, You told her she was making the front of the store look like a loading dock. He paused. That's not a complaint about the entrance. That's something else. Sylvia said, I don't think I need to explain the operations of my store to A. No, you don't, Raymond said. He was not loud. He was not unkind. He had the particular evenness of someone who has learned that volume has nothing to do with weight. But she's been trying to get a signature for 4 minutes and all she needs is a signature. He looked at Denise. Denise looked at Sylvia. 1 second, 2. Then she looked at Paulette. She held up the scanner. She said quietly, "If you want to sign here." Paulette signed. The machine beeped. She took the scanner back and put it in her bag. She picked up the remaining packages from the bottom rack of the cart. She turned the cart toward the door. The broken left wheel dragged against the tile floor with the soft scraping sound she had stopped hearing years ago. She did not look at Sylvia. She did not look at Raymond. She was almost to the door. And then Sylvia said it. She was not on the phone. She was not whispering. She said it to the room. To Denise. To the shelves of crystal and leather and silver that lined the walls. To the woman walking toward the door with 4 packages left to deliver. She said, "Some people really don't understand the difference between serving the public and belonging in it." The room went quiet. The particular quiet that falls when something has been said that cannot be unsaid. That sits in the air with the density of something real. Not dramatic. Not cinematic. Just heavy. The way an ordinary cruelty is heavy when you hear it applied to a specific person in a specific moment, and you cannot pretend you didn't. Denise went still behind the register. Her hand was resting on the counter. She did not look up. Paulette stopped. Her hand was on the door handle. The metal was cool. The door was half an inch from opening. She did not turn around. She did not turn around because Simone was going to be at after-school pickup in 4 hours, and she needed to finish her route, and she was not going to stand in this store for 1 more second, giving this woman more of her time than a signature required. She was not going to cry in Whitmore's Fine Gifts on Beckford Street. She was not going to say the thing sitting in her chest because the thing in her chest was 10 years deep, and this woman was not worth a single sentence of it. She pushed the door open and walked out. The October light hit her the way it always did on this block. Clear, direct, the kind of afternoon light that makes everything look more distinct than it is. She turned the cart right. The broken wheel corrected. She started walking. Raymond stayed. He set his hands on the counter, not hard, flat, the way a person sets their hands down when they intend to stay where they are. He looked at Sylvia. He said, "Her name is on that package. Did you notice that?" Sylvia said, "I beg your pardon?" The return address, the name on the delivery confirmation. He nodded toward the package Denise was still holding. "That's a federal employee who has been doing her job correctly, and you just told her she doesn't belong in a public space while she was doing it." Sylvia said, "I was making a comment about operations." Raymond said, "No, you weren't." He said it the way a fact is stated when it doesn't need agreement to be true. Flat. Final. The kind of sentence that closes a door. He turned to Denise. He said, "You did the right thing." Then he looked at Sylvia one more time. He did not raise his voice. He did not threaten. He said, "My name is Raymond Cutter. I own Cutter Holdings. We've done business with 3 of the anchor tenants on this block for 11 years. We have a new mixed-use development going up 6 blocks from here that will bring about 40 new retail leases to this part of Savannah in the next 18 months. He paused. "I was going to ask if Whitmore's might be interested in being considered for a location in the new building." Sylvia's expression shifted. It was the same shift as before, only in reverse. From certainty to recalculation, moving fast. Raymond said, "I think I'll look elsewhere." He picked up his keys from where he had set them on the counter without realizing it. He turned and walked out the same door Paulette had gone through. The bell above the door rang when it closed. Then silence. Denise stood behind the register with the package in her hands. She set it down slowly. She looked at the door, then at the space where Paulette had stood, then down at the counter where the scanner had been. She thought about what she was going to say to her mother when she got home that night. And she thought about the sound the cart made on the tile floor going out, the soft, scraping drag of a broken wheel that had learned to go forward anyway. Outside, Raymond walked to the corner. He turned left on Beckford and moved at an even pace along the sidewalk. He was not looking for Paulette. He did not know her name. He did not have her route or her schedule. He had simply walked out because staying another minute in that store would have required him to say more than he had planned to, and he was finished. He had meant what he said about the development. He had not planned to say it when he walked in, but it was true, and she needed to hear it, and once the door had closed, he did not regret saying it. He was 40 feet from his car when he saw her. She was at the last building on the block, the brick one with the green awning, trying to get a package into the narrow mail slot beside the intercom panel. The cart was beside her. The broken wheel had finally given out against the lip of the sidewalk and tipped the cart at an angle that made everything lean. Raymond stopped walking. He watched her straighten the cart without expression, the way a person handles a familiar problem, efficiently, without frustration. Because frustration costs time she has already calculated she doesn't have. He started walking again. He reached her just as she got the package through the slot. She turned. She saw him. She recognized him from the store, not his name, not who he was, only that he was the man who had said what he said. Her face did not change. She did not say anything. He said, "Do you have much left on your route?" She looked at him, measured him the way she measured everything. Not with suspicion exactly, with the specific caution of a woman who had learned that men who step forward to help sometimes help, in shapes you didn't ask for. She had been thanked before in ways that cost her something. She was not interested in that kind of currency. She said, 3 stops. He said, "Can I ask you something?" She waited. He said, "How long have you been on this route?" She said, 7 years on Beckford, 12 total. He nodded. He said, "My mother was a home health aide for 23 years. She retired in 2011. She used to come home and tell me about the families she worked for, the ones who treated her like she was part of the household, and the ones who made her use a separate entrance." He paused. "She never told me which ones bothered her more. She didn't have to." Paulette looked at him. She had not expected that sentence. She had been braced for a different kind of conversation. An apology on behalf of a stranger. "I'll offer to do something." She said, "I've got 3 stops left." He said, "I know, I just..." He stopped. He said, "What she said in there was wrong. I wanted to say that before you finished your route and went home, and it was just one more thing that happened." Something crossed Paulette's face. Quick, not quite tears, the particular expression of a person who has been carrying something alone for long enough that being seen, even briefly, catches them off guard. She blinked once. She looked at the cart. She said, "Thank you." She said it the way people say thank you when they mean it, and don't have room for more words than that. He said, "My name is Raymond Cutter." She said, "Paulette Odom." He said, "What do you actually need, Ms. Odom?" "Not today, in general. What does your day look like?" It was such a direct question that she almost laughed. She did not get asked that question. She got asked to sign overtime slips and fill out childcare subsidy applications and explain why a delivery was 40 minutes late because the building had no working buzzer and the tenant hadn't answered the intercom, and she had stood in the cold for 8 minutes before someone came down to let her in. She said, "I pick my daughter up at 3:30. I start at 6:30 in the morning. On Tuesdays, I drive my mother to dialysis before my shift and pick her up after. My daughter is 9. She wants to be a marine biologist, and she has been writing letters to the Savannah Aquarium asking if she can volunteer, and they keep sending her pamphlets instead of answers." She said all of it the way a person reads a list, not as a complaint, as a description, the way you describe a route. These are the stops. This is the order. This is how long each one takes. Raymond said, "And what do you need?" She said, "I need my mother to have a better transportation option to dialysis. The medical transport van runs 40 minutes late half the time, and she's been written up twice for missing the start of her session. That affects her treatment." She said it plainly. "I need someone at the postal district office to fix the overtime assignment system, because the way it's structured now, the least senior carriers get the longest overtime routes, and I've had my hours cut twice this year because I can't take a 4-hour overtime block on a Tuesday when my mother has dialysis and no one in scheduling has any flexibility." She stopped. She looked at the cart. "And I need this wheel fixed, but that's not your problem." He almost smiled. She looked at him. She was still deciding something. He could see it in the way she held her shoulders, not closed, not open, waiting. She said, "Who are you?" He said, I told you, Raymond cut her. She said, I heard the part about the development. What does that mean exactly? He said, it means I have resources and a phone and relationships with people who sometimes move things. It doesn't mean I can fix everything you just described, but some of those things are fixable. She said, I don't want someone to go around the system for me. I want the system to work the way it's supposed to. He said, I know the difference. She looked at him for a long time. Then she said, my daughter, the letters to the aquarium. He said, yes. She said, she's written 4. She is 9 years old, and she has written 4 professional letters to a public institution asking for a volunteer opportunity, and they have sent her pamphlets. Her voice did not change. But something under it did. She printed them on the printer in the school library because we don't have a printer at home. She looked up the mailing address herself. She wrote a draft first, and then she wrote a final copy. She paused. I would like someone to actually read one of those letters. Raymond did not say anything for a moment. He said, I'm on the board of the Georgia Aquarium in Atlanta. The Savannah location operates differently, but I know the director. I know him well. Paulette went still. Her hand was on the cart handle. Raymond said, what's your daughter's name? Paulette said, Simone. He said, will you let me reach out to him on Simone's behalf? Paulette looked at him. She was measuring him again. Not the same way as before. Not with caution. With something more careful than caution. The look of a woman deciding whether the thing being offered is real. She said, if he responds because someone called him, that's one thing. If he responds because Simone's letter was worth responding to, that's another. He said, then let me make sure the letter gets read. What happens after that is up to him and up to Simone. A long pause. The October light moved slightly as a cloud passed. Down the block, someone came out of a building and walked in the other direction without looking at either of them. Paulette said, okay. Just that word. He took out his phone. He typed in the number she gave him. He said he would be in touch. He said it the way people sometimes say things they don't follow through on. She recognized the rhythm of it and decided she would believe it when she saw it and forget it if she didn't. She turned the cart. The broken wheel dragged. She started walking toward the next stop. 3 days later, Raymond called. He said he had spoken with the director of the Ogeechee Wildlife and Marine Education Center, which was the organization that partnered with the Savannah Aquarium on its youth volunteer program. He said the director's name was Marcus Webb, and Marcus had asked Raymond to pass along a message, which was that Simone's most recent letter, the 4th one, was the best inquiry letter he had read from a young person in 11 years of running the program, and that he would be calling the Odom household directly later that week if Paulette was agreeable. Paulette sat with her phone in her hand in the kitchen of the apartment on Forsyth Road for almost a full minute after the call ended. Simone was in the living room watching something on the tablet with headphones on. Paulette could see the back of her head, the 2 braids she had done herself that morning at 6:15 before her shift because the appointment at the salon wasn't until Saturday. She did not go in and tell her yet. She sat with it for a minute. Let it be something, only she knew for 60 seconds before it became something that would change the expression on her daughter's face. Then she put the phone down and walked into the living room and tapped Simone on the shoulder. Marcus Webb called on a Thursday. He spoke with Simone for 20 minutes while Paulette sat on the other side of the kitchen table and tried to look like she was reading something. She was not reading anything. She was watching her daughter sit up straighter than she had ever sat at that table, one hand flat on the surface, the other holding the phone, her voice clear and careful the way it got when she was serious about something. The Marine Biology Volunteer Program started in January, 8 Saturdays, 10 to 2, at the Education Center on Skidaway Island. Paulette drove her both ways. The overtime assignment system at the Postal District took longer. Raymond made one call, not to fix it, but to ask whether a formal review had been conducted in the last 2 years. It had not. The review was scheduled. It took 4 months. When the new scheduling guidelines came out, they did not mention Paulette by name. They did not mention her situation or her mother's dialysis or the Tuesday overtime blocks. They mentioned 37 other carriers in the district who had submitted scheduling conflict requests that had not been processed. Paulette's name was on that list. 36 others were too. Her Tuesday restrictions were approved on a Thursday afternoon in February. She found out via a notification on the Postal Service app. She was on her route when it came through. She read it standing at a mailbox on Habersham Street, the blue metal one at the corner where the paint was peeling at the bottom. She read it twice. She put her phone back in her bag. She kept walking. She called her mother that evening. Her mother, Paulette Odom, was 71 years old and had been on dialysis for 3 years and had not once in 3 years complained about the medical transport van or the wait times or the way the center smelled on Tuesday afternoons. She asked her daughter every week how the route was going, what the weather had been, whether Simone had done anything interesting. Paulette told her about the scheduling approval. Dorothy said, "Baby, that's just right." She said it quietly, the way she said most things. "That's just right." Paulette said, "I know, Mama." She did not tell her mother about the store on Beckford Street. She did not tell her about Sylvia Whitmore, or the cream blouse, or the pen, or the words that had been said in front of the crystal shelves, and the leather goods, and the young woman named Denise who had been trying to do her job. Some things you carry inside without narrating them, not because they don't matter, but because the weight of naming them to someone who loves you is sometimes heavier than the weight of the thing itself. What she did tell her mother was this. She told her there had been a man in a store who had said what needed to be said. She did not say his name. She did not explain who he was, or what he owned, or what he had decided not to do. Her mother said, "There are still some good ones." Paulette said, "Yes, there are." Sylvia Whitmore submitted a proposal in November to be considered for a retail space in the Cutter Holdings development on Congress Street. The proposal was reviewed by the leasing team. It was declined in December. The letter cited a mismatch between the tenant profile being sought and the business model submitted. It was a form letter. It said nothing specific. It said everything necessary. Denise gave her 2 weeks' notice in January. She went to work at a women's clothing boutique on Bull Street run by a woman named Patricia, who paid her the same hourly rate and gave her Sundays off and said please and thank you every day without being reminded. Denise did not think about Whitmore's often. When she did, she thought about the cart with the broken wheel and the sound it made on the tile floor going out. She thought about Paulette's hand on the door handle and the way she had stood at the counter for 4 minutes without moving, without raising her voice, without giving anyone anything they had not earned. She thought about that sometimes when she was having a hard day, when a customer was dismissive, when someone talked past her to the register. She thought about what it looked like to be still when someone was trying to make you feel small, and she thought about how it looked less like patience and more like refusal. Like a person who had simply decided a long time ago that other people's cruelty was not a thing she was going to absorb and carry and make room for in her body. Paulette made room for other things instead. On a Saturday in March, she drove Simone to Skidaway Island for the 5th session of the volunteer program. Simone brought a notebook with questions written in it, 12 questions in order that she had prepared the night before. She showed the list to Paulette in the car. Paulette looked at it at a red light. She looked at her daughter's handwriting, the particular way she wrote her 7s with a line through the middle, because a teacher in 2nd grade had shown her that was the European way, and she had never stopped. She handed the notebook back. Simone said, "Do you think I have too many questions?" Paulette said, "I think you should ask every single one." Simone looked at the list. She added a 13th. They drove the rest of the way to the island in the particular morning quiet of a Saturday when the work week is ended and the next one hasn't started. And for a few hours the day belongs to the people in the car. The marsh grass was gold in the early light. The water was flat and silver behind it. Simone had her face against the window, watching something Paulette couldn't see. Paulette watched the road. The uniform was in the back seat for tomorrow. The dialysis appointment was Tuesday as always. The route on Monday started at 6:30. All of it was still there, in its place, load-bearing. But the Tuesday blocks were hers now, And Simone was going to walk into a marine education center in 20 minutes with 13 questions and a notebook and the particular posture of a child who has learned from watching someone that you don't move when someone tells you to move. You stay. You finish what you came to do. You hand them the scanner. You walk out when you're ready. Some people spend their whole lives trying to make other people feel the size they've decided they should be. They choose their words for maximum contraction. They say them in rooms full of witnesses who look at the candy rack instead of the person absorbing the blow. And they count on the silence of everyone around them to make those words permanent. They do not count on the man who is buying olive oil in the next aisle. They do not count on the 9-year-old who writes 4 letters on a school library printer. They do not count on the woman who has walked this exact route for 7 years and knows every broken buzzer, every narrow slot, every building where you have to wait 8 minutes in the cold before someone comes down. They do not count on her staying at the counter. But she does. She always does. If this story reminded you of someone who stood up quietly when it mattered, share this with them. Not next week, today. And tell us in the comments, what's the smallest thing someone did for you that they probably didn't think twice about, but that you have never forgotten? We read every one. I keep thinking about that broken wheel on Paulette's cart. The way it dragged against the tile floor when she walked out of that store. She didn't fix it. She didn't complain about it. She had just learned its rhythm and corrected for it without thinking. And I think that's the thing about people like Paulette that the Sylvia Whitmores of the world completely miss. They see the worn hem and the gray uniform and the cart with the bad wheel, and they think they're looking at someone who has less. They don't understand they're looking at someone who has learned to carry more than most people ever will. What happened in that store on Beckford Street was not complicated. A woman with a title and a pearl necklace decided that a woman doing her job did not belong in the same space as her clients. She said it out loud. She said it in front of a young cashier who had to choose, in real time, what kind of person she was going to be. That's how these moments work. They don't ask permission. They arrive and they ask you a question, and the answer you give is the one you have to live with. Sylvia gave her answer. So did Denise eventually. So did Raymond. What I find myself sitting with is not the confrontation. It's Simone, a 9-year-old who printed 4 letters on a school library printer because she didn't have one at home, who looked up the mailing address herself, who wrote a draft and then a final copy, because that's what you do when something matters to you and you don't have shortcuts. That's not just effort. That's a child who has watched her mother go out in the dark at 6:30 every morning and come back and still have something left, and has understood, without being told, that the way you get where you want to go is by doing the work before anyone tells you it's worth doing. Paulette didn't raise a daughter who waits for permission. She raised a daughter who writes the letter anyway. 4 times if she has to. That's the thing that outlasts any moment of cruelty. The cruelty is loud. It fills a room. It makes people look away. But what Paulette passed down to Simone in that apartment on Forsyth Road, in every early morning and every dialysis run, and every Tuesday she rerouted her whole day to sit in a waiting room so her mother wouldn't be alone, that runs deeper than any insult ever could. I've come to believe that the people who treat others as though they don't belong are usually people who have never had to actually earn anything in a room full of strangers. They've mistaken access for worth. They've never had to develop the kind of quiet, unbending integrity that comes from showing up anyway. From staying at the counter. From handing over the scanner without raising your voice. From walking out when you're ready and not a second before. Raymond Cutter didn't save Paulette. Let's be clear about that. He said what needed to be said. He made one phone call. The rest of it, the scheduling appeal, the Tuesday blocks, Simone's 13 questions in the notebook, all of that was already in motion. He just stopped pretending it wasn't happening, which is the bare minimum, and which somehow, in that store on that day, made him the only person in the room willing to do it. What I take from this is not a lesson about karma or the right person being in the right place. What I take is something simpler. The choices you make when you think no one important is watching are the ones that build you, slowly, over years, into the kind of person who doesn't need someone else to speak first. Paulette had already built herself. The store just didn't know it yet.